I'm here in my capacity as a proxy on behalf of Dr. Frederick Nocker, the Minister of Posts and Telecommunications, who, due to other national policy engagement, is unable to be in your midst this moment. Honorable Chair, our dynamic, energetic, and restless regulatory pathfinder in Liberia, my colleague across the ICT sector in Liberia, the leadership of AXO Liberia, other distinguished invitees, I guess from the academic, the business community, and other entities in Liberia. Judy, our consultant currently working with us in terms of helping to put some strategy in place regarding accelerating the use of internet. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin firstly by appreciating the level of work this current leadership has undertaken over the past few years. Around the world, since AXO, as an NGO advocating for the use of open access without barrier, regulatory constraints, and a couple of other issues started, AXO Liberia has been in the vanguard, helping to make sure that the same opportunities that are available and accessible to other stakeholders as well is also equally available, accessible, and without constraints to stakeholders in Liberia. I'm therefore not surprised that in today's forum, the leadership has specifically identified the need to be able to expand its membership base. Why is this important? It is important because as leaders who know the benefits that internet provides for diverse users, it cannot be just limited to a few. It cannot be limited to a few, perhaps, who understand when AXO was established. It cannot be limited to a few who perhaps understand how to make maximum use of internet. It cannot be limited to a few who understand the critical role that internet will continue to play in the development regarding inclusion and other issues surrounding the debate, both on the national level and at the international level. It is also safe to say that as we speak on the need to expand the membership of AXO today, there is a need to go beyond the elite. When we mention elite, particularly in the context of accessing internet, we are talking about perhaps regulatory officials who understand that without internet, they will not do their work well. We are speaking about policymakers who understand that without internet, they will not be able to connect, communicate, and interact with their colleagues, both in and outside Liberia. We are perhaps referring to academics who understand that without internet, there cannot be any distant learning, perhaps what you call e-education and a couple of other things. And the elite also refers to those who understand that in order to adapt and evolve with online transaction, you will need to have access to internet. Therefore, this kind of deliberation, this kind of setting, this kind of program is critical as it helps to expand the boundary, the horizon of people who, in their diversity, should be in a position to take care of the opportunities that internet provides. It's good to also know what is the current membership strength of AXO Liberia. As a member myself, though inactive member, I'm told that our database points to 200 members in the meantime. Following this workshop that is seeking to expand, to create awareness that will attract many other users to become members of AXO, I'm very sure that that number is bound to rise. From 200, from today, 18th December 2015, perhaps to the next 2 years, we might be looking forward to doubling the number and or even adding it more exponentially. So today we have 200 members. The prospects opportunities are there. With this vigorous campaign that you have initiated to expand membership through awareness, to ensure that other people take advantage of the platform internet provides, it is safe to conclude that over the next years, holding these strategies constant, we might be able to reach those numbers. It's also good to indicate that by doing so, there is a need to ensure that certain strategies are put in place. I like to believe, among others, that some of the strategies that will be required will include the following. Those who are career icons in the ICT sector, those who got their masters in ICT related field, those who have their certifications and are living and working that you cannot take access to internet away from them. By taking access to internet away from them, it means that you want to render them suffocated. So those kind of people, those career icons, it's better we identify them in the community and make sure they share in the perspective that we already have under this leadership of my friend and brother, Zeze Koluba. Who are the other people that would stay who identify? In the academics today, there are a lot of transition taking place. With these transitions, most courses that people use to offer from a traditional mode, where people will do the manual assignment and all of those, these courses are now at least being mixed with some approach with online, giving online platform. There are a couple of colleges and universities around Liberia. There are a couple of professional schools who already understand what ICT can do, particularly with the use of the internet. It's better we also identify these people and target them in our membership drive. Civil society organizations, community-based organizations, opinion leaders of high standing. We also need to see how to identify, engage these people so that we succeed in bringing them on board as integral member of ACTION. Why is that important? It is important because the more you have many stakeholders sharing into the conversation, the better the chances for exploring opportunities that 2 or 3 persons might not be able to explore. So it's important. There are ICT champions also nationally. Some of the national ICT champions, you have them in the hall, but there are some that are not necessarily in our midst. Madam Chair from the LTA knows exactly some of our colleagues will understand how and why ICT internet is really relevant. These kind of people, when we map them out, when we identify, engage them, and make them to become member of ASO Liberia chapter, the better the prospects even of funding some activities that ASO Liberia might be undertaking. Promotion of steps online in terms of how to enroll into the membership of ASO Liberia. This is critical, this is important, because not everyone might have an information or an idea in terms of how to become a member of ASO Liberia. So activities and steps leading to what to do, where to go, and how to go, where to go becomes much critical. Critical in terms of providing the opportunities for such potential members to benefit from. And one of those sessions and activities, of course, is this workshop that you are having today. This workshop to which you've invited a number of people across the sector of the society. Others could be sending generic email to a number of different addresses that you may have access to in terms of what database that may be available to you. We could share and explore those opportunities aimed at expanding our membership size. In doing this, we are guided by two fundamental indicators. Those who share common geographic location with us, because we can be looking for ASO Liberia members and go seeking after, for example, those who may have interest in becoming ASO Cote d'Ivoire chapter. You can go after those who may have interest or are members, for example, of ASO Sierra Leone chapter. So in terms of geographic locale and confines, which is a given indicator, you have the opportunity to be able to know exactly what the boundaries are and why it is important to explore those stakeholders that are within your boundaries. The next has to do with those who share expressed common interest. By expressed common interest, now the chair, Dr. Noke, including a couple of different professional people, were able to undertake the establishment of internet exchange point in Liberia. The values that drove them into establishing the internet exchange point in Liberia first is to be able to address the critical infrastructure gap that Liberia has lacked prior to the time of commissioning the ISP. So you see people like these who understand what internet can do will go together, take more deliberate concrete steps in putting structures and values in place with the objective of making transformation in the sector. These are people that we refer to as people with common express interest. It's good for us to identify these people and for us to pursue them further. The next has to do with now we have in terms of ICT widely, there are four critical e-services. You have the e-education, e-health, e-commerce, and e-government. So those of us who are in the public sector, who want to provide, who are required or should be required to provide services to citizens using internet, to provide services to business using internet, to provide services to government in order to enhance and facilitate internal efficiency and transparency. These are people who also have shared expressed common interests. It's also good we get in contact with them and make sure we get them on board. The same can be said about those who are in the business community in our country, and that can also be said about those who are even in the health sector, among others. Madam Chair, Mr. President of PUL, my long-time colleague, Brother Zeze Howard, Watkins, Donna, colleagues across the table, this session is important because it will help to widen the insight and understanding in terms of the relevance internet provides for everyone. And with these, we look forward to further cooperation, interaction, and collaboration. Dr. Noke has asked me to convey his message to you in a special way that in future events, he will be here in person and will be able to bring more robust, profound, quality applications in terms of what actually I benefit. With this, I conclude my comments and remarks.
Well, Mr. Minister, another part of your responsibility is to declare the workshop.
Madam Chair, the President of PUL, officials of ASO Liberia, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, I see one focusing me already. For the purpose of deliberation and in line with protocol already outlined by ASO Liberia chapter in terms of what will be transpiring over the next 2 days, I now use the authority transferred to me by Dr. Wake, and in this forum declare this workshop officially open.
Thank you very much, Minister Titus. We will now invite the chairperson of the LTA, Madam Angelique Weeks, who will be speaking on open access principles for connections to submarine cables and domestic backhaul networks and internet growth. Madam Weeks.
Madam Weeks, we want to make sure that we have a good video.
Jolly, are you getting everything?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Sure.
All right.
Yes, I'm hearing you in New York and you're looking good.
Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Honorable D. Zotawon Titus, Deputy Minister of Posts and Telecommunications for Technical Services. Representatives of the Liberia Telecommunications Authority present. Mr. PUL President. Mr. Koluba Zize Howard, President of ISOC Liberia Chapter. Other officers and members of the Internet Society Liberia Chapter. Ms. Judith Hellerstein, and other representatives of development partners present, members of Liberia's growing internet community, the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here today to serve as a speaker at this program of the ISOC Liberia chapter, especially so because its president, Mr. Howard, is one of my trusted employees at the LTA. I hope that you all have taken advantage of the wealth of knowledge and experience that he possesses, and the high energy and commitment that he brings to any job that's presented to him. I've been asked to speak on open access principles for connections to submarine cables and domestic backhaul networks and internet growth. The best practice guidelines for enabling open access adopted by the 2010 Global Symposium for Regulators defined open access as, and I quote, the possibility for third parties to use an existing network infrastructure, end quote. This refers to the granting of wholesale access to network infrastructure or services by dominant service providers to competing networks. Open access anticipates that access is provided effectively on fair and reasonable terms, for which there is some degree of transparency and non-discrimination. While other definitions exist which imply different degrees of openness, there is agreement that open access applies to infrastructure and means that suppliers are able to obtain access to network facilities on equal terms. The regulatory model and the conditions of access do vary across jurisdictions. However, there is agreement that open access is paramount if the new digital economy is to be achieved and the benefits of liberalization are delivered to end users in terms of more and better quality of service at affordable prices. Open access arrangements are crucial for promoting competition, greater consumer choice, and lower prices in markets where it would otherwise be extremely challenging. Permitting new businesses to connect to existing communications networks, for example, is more affordable and less risky than building networks from scratch. A 2006 Matson and Mitchell study on local open access networks for communities and municipalities, which was commissioned by the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, listed as a key finding that access to the internet was considered a prerequisite for improving any country's economic and social welfare. Access to the internet improves national economic and social welfare because it can provide a conduit to enable open and accessible government, enhance business competitiveness, and improve the quality of their citizens' lives through the improved delivery of specialized services to include e-government services, telemedicine, and education. However, the benefits of improved economic and social welfare can only occur where there is access to not only the internet, but high capacity bandwidth that can provide broadband access to applications, services, and information available on the internet. It should be noted that open access agreements have rarely been reached voluntarily, as firms prefer to reach commercial arrangements that are not necessarily non-discriminatory or transparent. Put another way, most open access policies have been the result of direct or indirect public regulatory interventions. However, regulators need to balance the benefits of open access policies against the incentives for different actors to invest in infrastructure and services. Too often, this is presented as a trade-off between increasing competition and a potential negative effect on investment. For example, if open access prices are too low, it may discourage investment in new networks by both incumbent firms and new entrants. The goal is to introduce open access policies in a way that facilitates new investments and drives incumbents to respond in kind, thus producing benefits for the overall market. In 2009, Liberia was among a handful of countries in the region which was not connected to the global network of submarine optical fiber infrastructure. Connectivity between Liberia and the outside world relied exclusively on expensive satellite with limited availability of high capacity bandwidth. At that time, Liberia had some of the highest connectivity costs, with average satellite prices between US $4,000 to $5,000 for 1 megabit, compared with about $200 in the US and approximately $500 in East Africa. This, coupled with a lack of national backbone infrastructure, created a difficult environment for expanding availability of internet services and advanced applications. Internet penetration in 2009 stood at 1.6% and was among the lowest in the Africa region, while prices paid by Liberian users were usually 2 to 3 times regional average. For purposes of international connectivity along the coast of West Africa and with the rest of the world, the most attractive and viable option for Liberia was to connect to the Africa Coast to Europe project, a 17,000 kilometer submarine fiber optic cable system connecting potentially 24 countries with a landing station in Liberia. The West Africa Regional Communications Infrastructure Program, often referred to as WARCIP, was initiated by the World Bank as a regional approach to ICT sector reform in the ECOWAS region. This was intended to promote robust ICT growth in the region and yield significant benefits to member countries. The government of the Republic of Liberia, through the WARCIP Liberia project, acquired a US $25.6 million loan from the World Bank to facilitate Liberia's participation in the ACE Cable Consortium, provide legal and regulatory support to safeguard open access, and provide implementation support through institutional capacity building. A challenging and extensive regulatory activity embarked upon by the LTA was to facilitate the formation of the Cable Consortium of Liberia, commonly referred to as CCL. CCL was intended as a special purpose vehicle created to construct, own, and operate the $25 million Africa Coast to Europe Liberia landing station. CCL represents a public-private partnership